I didn't think it was that interesting. I didn't quite get the movie at the time. It just sort of escaped me. That's what Andrew McCarthy would later say about Pretty in Pink, the film that made him a teen idol, the prom king of 1980s romance. But look at him in that final scene, Blaine, standing alone in a rented tux, eyes full of apology and distance. It's not triumph. It's quiet disbelief. McCarthy had the bone structure of a movie star, and the soul of someone who never quite bought it. In a decade that worshipped charm and volume, he made stillness magnetic. He was the face on the poster, but off camera, he was already backing away. So how does someone become the voice of young love, while quietly rejecting the spotlight? Let's fade to black. Before he became the soft-voiced heartthrob of a generation, Andrew McCarthy was just a quiet kid in suburban New Jersey, born into comfort, but not connection. He grew up in Westfield, later Bernardsville. His parents divorced when he was young, and the emotional distance would echo throughout his life. He wasn't the class clown. He wasn't the golden boy. He was the observer, sharp, slightly removed, often unsure of his place. At Pingree, a private prep school, he found an early outlet in theater. Not because he loved attention, but because performance gave him structure, a script, a role, a mask. Later, he enrolled at NYU's acting program and dropped out within the first year. It didn't feel right, he'd say later. Too many people. Too much noise. He went back to auditioning on his own terms, and booked class 1983, almost by accident. This matters because McCarthy wasn't someone chasing fame. He was someone trying to figure out why he didn't want it, even as it came rushing toward him. You can already feel it in those early years, a push and pull between visibility and retreat. A young man who craved depth, but found himself in a town that rewarded surfaces. He wasn't trying to become a romantic icon. He was trying to disappear into the part. And maybe that's why it worked. Andrew McCarthy's first film, Class, 1983, wasn't exactly Shakespeare. It was a teen sex comedy, prep school boys, mistaken identities, and Jacqueline Bisset as the scandalous love interest. But even in a genre built on brashness, McCarthy stood out. Where others played loud, he played quiet. His eyes did most of the work, wary, curious, always slightly off-center. He didn't dominate the frame, he drifted through it, leaving a soft echo behind. Then came Heaven Help Us, 1985, a lesser-known gem. Set in a Catholic boys' school in the 1960s, it gave McCarthy a more layered character, contemplative, restrained, unsure how to fit in. It was subtle, understated, and very him. Critics began to notice this strange paradox. Here was a young actor who looked like a leading man, but moved like a character actor. And that's what caught the attention of John Hughes, the bard of teenage contradiction. When it came time to cast St. Elmo's Fire, McCarthy was the obvious choice for Kevin, the quiet writer, secretly in love, always standing just outside the heat of the group. And this is where things start to shift. Because while the rest of the Brat Pack burned with charisma, McCarthy smoldered. And that low, lingering flame would soon ignite into something much bigger, and much more conflicted. 1985, St. Elmo's Fire. Kevin Dolenz was the loner of the group, cynical, cerebral, in love with a friend he couldn't have. It was the perfect role for Andrew McCarthy. He played Kevin like someone carrying too much inner life. He didn't smile much. He looked like he wanted to disappear into his own coat. But that's what made him compelling, the sense that you weren't being asked to love him, you were being dared to understand him. In a cast of louder, flashier personalities, McCarthy was the one the camera kept returning to in silence. And that silence spoke volumes. 1986, Pretty in Pink. Then came the role that made him a teen idol, and nearly broke him. Blaine McDonough. Rich, polished, romantic. Everything Kevin wasn't. On screen, he was the dream, a soft-spoken, sensitive guy who chooses love over peer pressure. But behind the scenes, McCarthy felt like a fraud. I didn't think I was right for the part, he said years later. I wasn't that guy. He wasn't lying. Look closely at the prom scene, that iconic moment when Blaine shows up after seeming to abandon Andy. He delivers a soft apology, I always believed in you. I just didn't believe in me. You think he's talking about the character. But maybe he wasn't. Maybe that was Andrew McCarthy, breaking through. 1987, Mannequin. After Pretty in Pink, studios scrambled to put him in more romantic leads. Enter Mannequin, a surreal comedy where he falls in love with a department store dummy that comes to life. The film was a hit. But McCarthy felt trapped. He later called it silly, and admitted he never quite knew how to play the role sincerely. And yet, once again, the stillness, the sweetness, worked. Audiences projected desire onto him. But he was never playing desire. He was playing detachment. 1987, Less Than Zero. Finally, a role with darkness. In this adaptation of Bret Easton Ellis's novel, McCarthy played Clay, a college student returning home to a world of drugs, disaffection, and the slow-motion collapse of a friend. For the first time, his inwardness felt perfectly placed. He wasn't the dreamy boyfriend, he was the shell-shocked witness. And he thrived in it. Critics praised his restraint. That haunted stillness that once felt uncertain now felt earned. He wasn't reaching for the audience. He was trying to protect something. But then something happens. Instead of propelling him toward deeper, complex work, Less Than Zero became an endpoint. The industry didn't see him as serious. They saw him as the quiet, pretty one. The boy who didn't talk much and maybe didn't sell tickets like he used to. 1989, Weekend at Bernie's. So what do you do when you're tired of romance and Hollywood doesn't trust you with drama? You chase laughs. Weekend at Bernie's was a farce. McCarthy co-starred with Jonathan Silverman in a madcap comedy about two office workers pretending their dead boss is alive. It was ridiculous. It was loud. And it was a hit. But McCarthy wasn't proud of it. I didn't like being that broad, he said. Still, it paid the bills. It kept him working. But behind the scenes, he was slipping out the side door. Here's what's important. Andrew McCarthy never stopped being good. He just stopped believing he belonged in the places where he was winning. And in a town that demands confidence, his uncertainty was mistaken for weakness. So you have to ask, did Hollywood move on, or did he quietly let it go before it could break him? Was he ever playing the heartthrob, or escaping the weight of pretending to be one? There was no scandal, no box office bomb, no tabloid spiral. Andrew McCarthy didn't fall, he faded. But it wasn't accidental. By the early 90s, he was turning down scripts. Good ones. Commercial ones. Anything that asked him to play another version of the sensitive guy who stares into the distance. I started to hate how quiet I was on screen, he said. It stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like a trap. Hollywood, meanwhile, was shifting. The 90s favored charisma and edge, Tom Cruise in motion, Keanu with danger, even Hugh Grant with stammering charm. McCarthy was still, reserved, and in a way, punishingly sincere. Casting directors didn't know what to do with that. And he didn't offer them a solution. He tried a few darker roles, flirted with theater, dipped into TV. But the roles felt unmoored. And McCarthy, always more of a wanderer than a climber, didn't chase what was slipping. And this detail matters because he wasn't just resisting being typecast. He was resisting being misunderstood. In a 2010 interview, he put it plainly, people wanted me to be the guy in Pretty in Pink. But I never saw that guy in the mirror. So instead of breaking under expectation, he backed away from it. Not with anger. With distance. So here's the question. Can you walk away from the image without losing yourself completely? Or does Hollywood only remember the photo, not the person inside it? The roles kept shrinking. Guest spots. Made-for-TV movies. Small parts in ensemble casts. But Andrew McCarthy wasn't losing ground, he was changing lanes. In the early 2000s, he quietly stepped behind the camera. No press tours. No big debut. Just craft. He directed episodes of Gossip Girl, The Blacklist, Orange is the New Black, Good Girls, stylish, smart TV, and he got good at it. Directing gave him something acting never had, control. No longer the face of someone else's story, he could shape the entire frame. And the actor who once seemed trapped in stillness? Now, he was using that stillness to build tension for others. He didn't need to be seen. He just needed to see. And quietly, he built a second career, respected, consistent, behind the curtain. If you're enjoying this, we do stories like this every week. A lot of you still aren't subscribed, don't miss what's coming next. McCarthy never stopped telling stories. He just stopped telling them with his face. Behind the curtain, Andrew McCarthy was also rebuilding something else, himself. He's been sober since his early 30s, a quiet victory over a private struggle. No rehab headlines, no confessional interviews, just the decision to get honest and stay that way. He married twice. Has 3 children, lives in New York, not LA. And in 2012, he did something few actors ever attempt, he wrote a travel memoir. The Longest Way Home wasn't about fame, or film sets, or backstage gossip. It was about fear, love, getting lost on purpose, and finding yourself, finally, as a man, not a role. Critics were stunned. It was raw, lyrical, intimate. This was the Andrew McCarthy no camera ever really caught. He followed it up with a second book, Brat, in 2021, a meditation on his strange, unwanted place in pop culture history. Not bitter, just truthful. I didn't feel like I belonged in the Brat Pack. And maybe that's why I did. He wasn't trying to escape his past. He was trying to understand it. And in doing so, he finally gave voice to the quiet he carried all along. There's a certain kind of artist who never stops watching, even when no one's watching them. That's Andrew McCarthy now. He writes, travels, edits essays for National Geographic Traveler. His prose is lean, quiet, observant, much like his early screen performances. There's no performative wisdom, just a man looking outward and inward. In The Longest Way Home, he hikes mountains, crosses deserts, gets lost in remote villages, but always returns to the same question. What does it take to finally feel present? His answer isn't fame or validation. It's clarity. He never built a production company, never launched a lifestyle brand, never chased the spotlight from a different angle. Instead, he turned life into a story worth telling, with no co-stars, no cameras, no applause. And somehow, that feels more enduring than any sequel. In 2021, Andrew McCarthy released Brat, an 80s story, a memoir not about fame, but about discomfort. About being called a brat when you never asked to be part of the pack. About being praised for your looks when you never believed in your own charm. About walking away not because you failed, but because you didn't recognize the person on the screen anymore. The book hit a nerve. It wasn't bitter. It was searching. Then in 2024, he took it one step further, directing a documentary called Brats, revisiting that cultural moment with the people who lived it. For the first time, Andrew McCarthy wasn't inside the story. He was shaping it. And in doing so, he did what most actors never get to do. He rewrote his narrative, on his own terms. Not with a comeback role, but with a camera, and a question. What did that decade really cost us? Andrew McCarthy is no longer the poster on teenage walls. But he's still here. He directs, he writes, he parents, he moves through the world with less noise, more clarity. He never became the box office powerhouse. He didn't host SNL. He wasn't the heartthrob who aged into blockbuster gravitas. And maybe that's the point. Because when people remember Pretty in Pink, they remember him. The way he stood in the doorway, unsure. The way he said I didn't believe in me, and somehow, made it universal. He was the romantic lead who never seemed comfortable with the part. And in that discomfort, we found honesty. That's why it stuck. While others dazzled with confidence, McCarthy lingered. He left space. He asked you to lean in. And this detail matters because he showed that longing isn't loud. That connection can be quiet. That disappearing doesn't mean you didn't matter. His legacy isn't made of sound bites. It's made of stillness and the way it echoes. He may have left the spotlight, but the light still remembers him. Andrew McCarthy never shouted. He never chased. He just showed up, quietly, sincerely, and left a mark. He wasn't sure he deserved the love. But he gave us something more lasting than confidence. Honesty. So what really happened to Andrew McCarthy? Nothing scandalous. Nothing tragic. Just a soft refusal to become someone he wasn't. And maybe that's the most romantic thing he ever did. Thanks for watching. If this story spoke to you, drop a comment. Which Brat Pack member do you think understood themselves the least? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Up next, you might enjoy our deep dive on Meg Ryan, the queen who couldn't cry on cue anymore.